Ultramarines, get them out of here. Blood Angels, in the garbage. Salamanders, don't even look at them. Here's my custom Space Marine chapter. It's a rite of passage, I feel like, to make your own Space Marine chapter, right?
Totally.
I've painted, what have I painted Space Marine? I've painted Raptors, my Raptor Scouts. I've painted Imperial Fists.
Mm-hmm. Space Wolves.
Space Wolves. But now, I needed my own chapter. I had a vision, Victor.
Yeah.
I wanted to build a Phobos kill team, right?
Yeah.
Really cool models. But I wanted like a pretty full roster. And there's like 18 guys that I built up.
Oof.
And I don't want to spend 18 years painting 18 Space Marines, right?
Yeah.
So there's a few things I needed to be able to paint these in the way I wanted. First up, I knew I wanted a scheme that was very fast. Mm-hmm. That was like paramount. Second, I know I wanted to use orange, and I had a concept for a Space Marine chapter. So this is my headcanon, all right? The headcanon came first, and the scheme came after. The Adeptus Mechanicus needed their own special bodyguards. Okay, they're not heresy. What are they called? Bad mech.
Oh, Dark Mechanicus.
Yeah, they're not Dark Mechanicus, but they committed a little bit of heresy. Okay,
all right.
They stole like a bunch of random gene seeds. It was the Iron Hands. They're kind of like Iron Hand successors.
That's cool.
They made this chapter that they didn't want anyone else to know about. It's like kind of heretical.
Yeah.
But no one cares because they're the AdMech. So they made this chapter. The chapter thinks that they're like a real chapter, but then actually nobody else knows about them.
That's sweet. I like that.
All right.
Yeah.
They work on like fake terraformed planets to look like Mars. So they think they're on Mars, but they're not actually on Mars. They're all like rusted, not taken care of, like lots of like steel and like bare metal, unpainted, but really rusty and like covered in sand and crap and oil. Terrible. I know I wanted to use orange with blue accents. That was a thing that I wanted to do. And I wanted to have custom transfers for them. I ordered some transfers, little like techie cogwheel type transfers. This is my concept, okay?
Yeah, sounds cool.
I think I can do it.
Yeah.
And I had a scheme in mind. Should I show the people how I painted it?
Yeah.
All right, so to start off here, I've primed everything with Leadbelcher spray in a spray can outside. And I've come in, and our first real step is covering literally everything in Garaghak sewer contrast paint. Now, usually I don't really like contrast paints. I don't like the finish that they give and like the blotchiness and all that stuff. But here, it's with a purpose. I want a rusted metal look, and giving the minis a brown undercoat, I think it's just going to help set up everything for success for the long term. And also, there's always a little bit of the model that doesn't get primer on it in the cracks and crevices. This is going to make sure the cracks and crevices are all nice and dark, and there's going to be good contrast, and there's going to be no area of the model that just doesn't look dark enough in the recesses. And I don't really care about the finish of the contrast paint because you're basically not going to see 99% of it. Then while the contrast paint is still drying, I'm going and I'm adding Citadel Astrogranite basing texture. Since you're already waiting for the contrast paint to dry, you may as well do this step, and you can wait for both drying steps at the same time. This is the only real part of the scheme that requires like real serious drying time, because the next step is a dry brush, and if you're dry brushing over wet paint, you're gonna have a disaster. Yeah, but like I said, the finish of the contrast paint doesn't matter too much, because the next step is I've got a Canoptek alloy, and I'm just dry brushing it over the entire mini. It's almost further than a dry brush. It's almost like an overbrush, really getting all the surfaces to look nice and metallic again. I'm being pretty sloppy overall still. There's going to be so many steps later on that mean that I don't care about like little errors here and there. So I'm not looking for perfection at this step, nowhere near it actually, but I do just want a solid base to move on from. Okay, at this point, I would say we're actually onto real painting. Kind of everything before this was prep. But I'm going through and just base coating the rest of the model. So 90% of this model probably, or 80%, is going to be this metallic base that we already have down. But the other main color here is going to be orange. I'm going through with medium rust from AK. I've used this paint before on my orcs. So I'm just picking out the shoulder pads and just a little piece of the backpack to add some, break up the pure metal. And then on the helmet, which, yeah, I've sub-assembled the helmets just because I find it easier to base coat the heads separately. Okay, now I'm covering all the black parts on the model with Black Legion contrast paint. Like I said, I normally don't use contrast paint, but the coverage of this is so good, and you don't have to thin it, you just use it right out of the pot, so it just is a big time saver. Getting all the little like under armory, undersuit bits, as well as the gun, and more techniques here to break up the really boring metal. I'm just picking out the kneecaps to add some interest on the lower parts of the minis. Now I'm using my favorite brown here, Rhinox hide. It's just such a nice deep brown, great coverage. I'm picking out all the pouches and belts. And then while I have it on my palette, I'm doing a full coverage pass of the base. Now if I get a little on the feet, I really don't care, and you're gonna see why later, but speed over cleanliness here, speed over painting the lines. I'm trying to be fast with this game. I'm using Dawnstone here to just base coat the Reaver masks. And then I'm going all over the model, anywhere where there's like a little techie glowing piece. And I'm using AK Aquatic Turquoise here to base coat. Love this blue, super bright. I think it's going to contrast really well with the orange. I'm skipping ahead for the eyes to do the highlights ahead of all the other highlights, just because I think it's going to be easier to do now. So I'm just adding a little bit of white, pure white, into this turquoise and adding the glowiness to the eyes. And I'm also using gray Seer, which is an almost white gray, and just working up the skull on the face. All right, we basically have the whole model base coated now. There are not a lot of colors in this scheme. It's just a few colors used very purposefully. And I know I've said that sloppiness doesn't matter, but I am taking a pass here and just doing some cleanup, especially the areas where the little black meshy parts are on Space Marines. I always don't care about being clean and then clean it up later. I just find that so much easier and faster. So I'm just doing a very quick pass of cleanup, and then we're gonna stick the heads on. So that's the base of the scheme, I would say.
Yeah, I think it looks great. Through the first few steps, I was thinking that it was going to be like super boring, honestly, and just look too silver. But I thought the orange really broke it up nicely. I love the blue.
Yeah.
I think it looks awesome.
I think like an understated detail that I'm really happy with, the black knee pads.
Yeah, totally.
You
That
know?
does a lot. I wouldn't have done that because it looked tedious, but it paid off.
It was not with
Yeah.
contrast paint. It was like probably 3 seconds per knee pad.
Oof, that's like, whatever 36 times 3 is.
It's worth it.
Yeah.
Worth it.
I think they look great. I can't wait to see how crappy they can look in a good way.
Yeah, there's a few more steps that are going to make a big difference, I think. So first up, transfers. Now, this is a custom scheme, this is a custom chapter, and I really wanted to do something unique with the shoulder pad transfers. So I ordered some custom transfers online, actually. We don't have affiliate links. This is not sponsored at all. I just bought these out of my own money. But on Etsy, you can look up Impatient Tabletop. They sold these transfers, and I'm really happy with them, honestly. There were a couple things that were a little bit different between these and the GW transfers. Now, they are a bit less opaque when you apply them, and you really have to cut the transfers very close to the design. It's not like GW transfers where once you get them wet, they have like a little built-in border around the design and it just comes off. Like whatever you cut off the transfer sheet here is what is going to end up coming off with the transfer. So you have to really like use your hobby knife and cut very closely to the design. But both of these things are really non-issue for me. I just cut really close to the design and it was fine. And then yes, I am using GW transfers on one shoulder and these Impatient Tabletop transfers on another shoulder, and there is a bit of a difference in the level of opacity. The GW ones read as much more white and opaque, but it doesn't matter. After we're done with all the weathering and stuff, you're not even going to be able to tell, so I'm not worried about it. And now we're on to the weathering, which is a pretty huge part of this scheme. So I'm starting off here. You can see I got some of that orange back on my palette. I've got a sponge, and I'm just sponging on a chipping effect around the transfers. I think this really helps sell the fact that the transfers are part of the minis and they're not just, stuck on at the end. They kind of look like stickers, or sometimes they look too clean. I drew on some scratches with my paintbrush, and then I'm going on back with Rhinox hide, and I'm going to be doing a ton of chipping effect with the sponge with Rhinox hide. And especially I'm trying to add interest to the large panels and surfaces where there's not a lot going on, and just break it up and just add more variety to what I'm looking at. Then I get my brush out. I'm kind of doing like stippled edge highlights almost, except they're not really highlights. It's just like scraping along edges. I'm basically doing the same thing now over the black with Canoptek alloy, just adding more chipping and scratches and like the non-edge highlighting, edge highlighting. I guess here it kind of is edge highlighting because it's lighter colored than the black. All right, now we're moving on to another stage of the weathering. I've just really watered down Rhinox hide and the medium rust on my palette, and I'm getting it like really, really thin, various levels of thinned down and various levels of mixed together between these two paints, the Rhinox hide and the orange. And then I'm just kind of dripping it down the model and making it look like running rusty water. I'm focusing especially on starting these streaks from areas like in the recesses to help darken up the recesses. So like under the armpits or in the cracks connecting the backpack and the back of the Marine. Also from areas where I think rust would drip out. So from holes on the backpack, like exhaust vent type things, you know, lower down on the model, just to add more variety, gunk this guy up even more. And like I said, I'm doing this over the transfers to kind of obscure the fact that the GW transfer on the one side is much more opaque and bright than the Etsy transfer. I'm going through and quickly doing some edge highlights. Basically, I'm almost only doing edge highlights on the helmet. I've just mixed some pure white into this medium rust color, and I'm basically doing as little edge highlighting as I think I can get away with here, but I think on the helmet, at least, you need something. Okay, now I'm doing a pretty heavy dry brush of another like reddish brown color over the base. This is Doombull brown. Really, really like this tone. And I am not caring about being clean here. I'm not caring about avoiding the feet. You know, I want these Marines to feel like they've lived in the world. They've been running around on the dusty Martian Earth for a long time. They're not sterile looking Marines just placed on the base. They fit in with the base. And also, this is way easier than trying to avoid the feet. So, you know, it's win-win. Honestly, why would you not do this? For base rims, I went with Rhinox hide. I thought pure black would stand out too much, and the Rhinox hide really fits with the scheme. Plus, I like using non-black rims. I think it's just more interesting and fun. All right, we're almost done here. Just a quick blast of AK Ultramatte Varnish through the airbrush. And I've got some brown tufts, just super gluing them down on these bases. And that's the scheme. So really happy with this paint job, and I am super excited to finally show them off. I'm really happy with how these came out. I think, you know, basically everything that I wanted to get out of this scheme, I got out of the scheme. It was really fast. I painted like not on camera, just because like painting on camera adds a lot of time for me.
It does, yeah.
But off camera, I painted one single mini. It was about 95 minutes.
That's great.
So for me, that's really fast.
Yeah.
And I'm really happy with the quality. I think with all the weathering effects, with all the transfers and everything, you get like a pretty professional, whatever you want to say that. But like, I think it looks at a level of quality I'm really happy with.
Totally.
But not a lot of effort. And the weathering hides a lot of like maybe messy mistakes. You don't have to be super detailed.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like anyone who's watched our videos and has seen any of my models knows I lean heavily on that sort of thing. But I don't think it looks like, you know, masked or anything. I think, yeah, it looks great.
Yeah. Well, I had to buy all these Phobos guys, and you know, it takes a lot of time to figure out the scheme, paint everything. I ordered the transfers, and for that, I have to thank the 1 HP Gangsters and Mountain Goats on our Patreon.
Yeah.
And I think there's one more thing we have to do in this video.
Oh, what's that?
Name this chapter.
Ah, cool.
You know, after a lot of deliberation and thinking, you know, at the risk of being too much like the Death Guard, I just don't care.
Yeah.
In my heart, I know they're called the Rust Guard.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Rust Guard's good.
The Rust Guard.
Isn't Rust Guard like something you spray on the bottom of your car? Sorry.
So be it.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for watching this to the end. Remember to like this video if you liked it. Leave a comment. Let us know what scheme you want to see next for any kind of army out there. 40k kill team. These guys are going to be featured in a battle report next week, probably.
Yeah.
Really soon. So make sure you subscribe so you can catch that when it comes out. And if you're watching this video the day it comes out, we are streaming tonight.
That's right.
Here on YouTube. Come check it out. We're going to be having a shenanigan-filled game of Kill Team. Why can't I speak?
I don't know.
I've been blabbing on for too long.
It's
Let's just
getting
end
late.
the video.
Yeah, okay.
Cut it.
Bye.